In 1934, a marvel of aluminum and diesel thundered across America, promising to rescue the railroads and drawing crowds of over 1 million. Experts declared this train faster, lighter, and radically efficient, the miracle that would change everything. Yet after one blazing debut, no copy ever followed. If the M-1000 was so clearly the future, why did its revolution die almost instantly? The answer exposes the harsh reality behind American innovation and shatters what you thought you knew about progress on the rails. Union Pacific's M-1000 arrived in February 1934, gleaming with polished aluminum and a design straight from the world of aviation. The entire three-car train set weighed just 85 tons, less than a single heavyweight passenger coach from the steam era. Pullman Standard built its body using aircraft construction techniques, riveting aluminum panels into a seamless, streamlined shape. At 204 feet long, the M-1000 was a silver ribbon, promising speed and modernity, topped with a distinctive turret cab and painted in bright yellow and brown with a red accent stripe. The heart of the train was a 600-horsepower Winton 512 engine, burning distillate fuel and driving General Electric traction motors. This was no coal-belching steam giant. The M-1000 could cruise at 100 miles per hour and reach peaks of 110 miles per hour, all while using 60% less fuel than a comparable steam locomotive. Maintenance was slashed in half. There was no need for water towers, ash pits, or roundhouses filled with soot. The future, it seemed, would be clean, efficient, and fast. Union Pacific's chairman W. Averell Harriman saw more than a train. He saw a lifeline for the railroad industry battered by the Great Depression. He accepted delivery in Illinois with fanfare, and almost immediately, the M-1000 was sent on a nationwide publicity tour. Over the course of 5 months, it covered nearly 13,000 miles across 14 railroads, stopping in 68 cities. At the Century of Progress World's Fair in Chicago, the train became a centerpiece, drawing crowds that packed the platforms and spilled onto city streets. In Washington, D.C., President Franklin Roosevelt himself inspected the train, and newspapers across the country ran headlines about the little zip. More than 1 million Americans stepped aboard to see the future for themselves. Inside, they found a streamlined interior with Art Deco fixtures, air conditioning, and picture windows. Union Pacific's brochures promised a new era of comfort and speed, with the M-1000 as the flagship of a modern fleet. The press described it as a miracle of engineering, a glimpse of tomorrow delivered today. The excitement was electric. Here was a train that could run faster and cheaper than anything before it, built from materials borrowed from the latest airplanes, and powered by an engine that seemed to defy the age of steam. For a moment, the M-1000 looked unbeatable. As the tour ended and the train prepared for its first regular run, the stakes felt enormous. If this experiment worked, it could rewrite the rules of American railroading. But behind the spectacle, the real test was about to begin. The M-1000's first months in regular service brought an abrupt end to the euphoria. On August 16, 1935, while maneuvering at low speed through Kansas City Union Station, the train suffered a derailment. The cause traced back to a single axle, one of the lightweight components that made the train such a marvel on paper. Instead of absorbing the routine punishment of daily railroad service, the slender axle bent under the strain. The train's promise of aircraft-inspired efficiency now looked like a liability. Union Pacific's mechanical crews faced an unplanned challenge. The M-1000 was withdrawn from service for 51 days while engineers scrambled to redesign and reinforce the axles. Every day the train sat idle. The railroad had to substitute a conventional steam consist to keep the schedule. Maintenance shops, already unfamiliar with the new aluminum construction and articulated trucks, now had to rethink the basic running gear. The lesson was clear: pushing the boundaries of weight saving came with hidden risks. Innovations that dazzled on the test track could falter under the wear and tear of real-world operations. The derailment didn't just interrupt service, it rattled confidence. For a train built as a prototype, even a minor flaw could have outsized consequences. The entire concept depended on reliability. A single failure was enough to raise doubts inside the company and across the industry. The M-1000's axle trouble became a warning sign, not just for Union Pacific, but for anyone considering a fleet of integrated lightweight streamliners. Shop crews, who had mastered the art of keeping steam giants running through thick and thin, now found themselves at the mercy of parts that were not even stocked in most roundhouses. As repairs dragged on, the railroad's leadership weighed the implications. If one broken axle could sideline the most advanced train in the country, what would happen if there were a dozen or 100 such sets? The economics of mass adoption looked less certain. The M-1000 returned to service with stronger axles, but the episode left a mark. The excitement of the debut tour faded, replaced by a quiet realization. Building the future was one thing, making it work day after day was something else entirely. Union Pacific's M-1000 entered a world built for something entirely different. American railroads in the 1930s were designed around heavyweight steam trains, massive machines that pressed down on the rails with thousands of pounds per axle, their sheer weight forming the backbone of the country's signaling and safety systems. Every train movement depended on a simple principle. The steel wheels and axles completed an electrical circuit between the rails, activating signals and warning systems for miles ahead. This system worked flawlessly for trains that weighed as much as a small ocean liner. But the M-1000, with its 85-ton aluminum body and 3-car articulated design, was lighter than a single conventional coach. Signal engineers and safety departments paid close attention. While there is no record of the M-1000 actually failing to trigger a track circuit, the train represented a new kind of risk. Its lightweight construction raised questions. Would every axle reliably close the circuit, especially on older, less maintained tracks? Could a train this light be counted on to activate crossing gates, block signals, and interlocking towers without fail? The answer, at least in the records that survive, was a cautious yes, but only because the M-1000 operated on select routes, under close supervision, and with the understanding that its design was an outlier. Physical compatibility did not stop with the track. The M-1000's streamlined, low-slung body and unique door placement meant that standard boarding platforms were often a poor fit. At some stations, passengers had to step up or down awkwardly to board, and ground-level loading was common on its assigned routes. No widespread platform reconstruction took place, but the experience was far from seamless. The train's fixed formation, 3 permanently joined cars, meant it could not be lengthened to match platform lengths or seasonal surges in demand. In effect, the M-1000 was always either too small or too rigid for the infrastructure around it. Maintenance posed its own puzzle. Steam locomotives and heavyweight cars could be serviced in any roundhouse or coach yard across the country with parts and expertise available on every division. The M-1000, by contrast, required specialized knowledge and unique components. Its aluminum body panels, articulated trucks, and gasoline-electric engine were unfamiliar territory for most shop crews. Keeping the train running meant stocking dedicated spares and training personnel in new repair techniques, an overhead that made sense for a prototype, but not for a national fleet. In practice, these physical mismatches did not cause headline failures, but they quietly limited the train's world. The M-1000 could only be assigned to routes where its lightweight, unusual boarding, and unique maintenance needs would not disrupt standard operations. Every mile outside that narrow comfort zone raised the risk of operational headaches. The American rail system, built for heavy, flexible, modular trains had little room for an experiment that did not fit its basic patterns. The M-1000 was a glimpse of a possible future, but it was always a guest in someone else's house, a visitor who could never quite settle in. Union Pacific's executives, facing the harsh arithmetic of the Great Depression, needed every train movement to pull its weight, literally and financially. The M-1000, for all its technological flair, seated only 116 passengers across its 3 permanently joined cars. On a railroad where a single steam locomotive could haul a dozen heavyweight coaches, sometimes more than 600 people at a time, the streamliner's capacity looked paltry. Each departure consumed the same crew, the same track slot, and much of the same overhead as a train 5 times its size. This wasn't just a matter of prestige or tradition. Railroads paid for every mile a train ran, wages for engineers and conductors, dispatching, access rights, and maintenance, regardless of how many seats were filled. The cost to move a train from Kansas City to Salina didn't shrink just because the train was lighter or faster. With only 116 tickets to sell per run, the M-1000 had to make every seat count. But on most routes, that simply wasn't enough volume to cover the fixed costs, especially when compared to the revenue from a full-length steam consist. The train's articulated design, with cars sharing wheel sets, locked its size in place. If demand spiked for a special event or holiday, there was no way to add extra coaches. If travel slumped, empty seats still made the journey, dragging down earnings. Conventional trains could flex with the seasons, adding cars for summer crowds, dropping them in the off-peak months, even splitting or combining sections en route to match demand. The M-1000 offered no such agility. It was all or nothing, every single trip. For Union Pacific's accountants, the numbers told a blunt story. Fuel and maintenance savings, impressive on paper, couldn't offset the lost revenue from unfilled seats or the inability to scale up for busy days. The train's price tag, $230,997, was a major investment amid economic collapse, and it was justified only if the streamliner could replace more expensive steam trains on low-traffic routes. But the reality was harsher. The M-1000's limited capacity meant it was assigned to secondary lines, never the main arteries of American railroading. Even there, it struggled to generate enough ticket revenue to justify its existence. As the dream of a streamlined fleet faded, Union Pacific leadership began to rethink their approach. The lesson was clear. Efficiency meant little if it came at the expense of capacity. In a business where every train movement had to earn its keep, the M-1000's elegant design became an economic liability. The future would belong not to fixed, lightweight sets, but to flexible trains that could match their size to the needs of the day. The M-1000 had shown what was possible, but not what was profitable. Union Pacific's experiment with fixed, lightweight streamliners quickly ran into a wall of practical economics. After the M-1000, the railroad commissioned additional articulated sets, 11 in total, not just 1 or 2, but each faced the same dilemma. Permanently coupled cars meant every train was locked at a specific length and capacity. When holiday crowds packed the stations, there was no way to add extra cars. When ridership slumped, empty seats made the journey anyway. Every departure required a full crew and a dedicated path on the timetable, regardless of how many passengers actually boarded. Meanwhile, a different approach was gathering momentum. Diesel-electric locomotives, built as independent units, could pull any combination of standard passenger cars. This modular system let railroads tailor each train to the day's demand. If traffic spiked, they added more coaches or sleepers. If business slowed, they dropped cars at the terminal and sent the locomotive out with a shorter consist. Crews, maintenance shops, and equipment buyers all preferred this flexibility. Locomotive fleets could be rotated, serviced, or reassigned as needed, and no single breakdown would sideline an entire train. The numbers told a clear story. Across the country, railroads moved away from fixed train sets and embraced the modular diesel model. By the late 1930s, Union Pacific's new streamliners all used diesel locomotives at the front and conventional cars behind. The integrated articulated sets stopped at 11. The promise of streamlined speed and diesel efficiency lived on, but in a form that fit the railroad's need for adaptability and scale. The M-1000's legacy was real, but its package was quietly set aside in favor of a system that could grow, shrink, and survive the unpredictable swings of American passenger rail. Speed was the promise that drew headlines, but the reality proved less dramatic. On test runs, the M-1000 reached 110 miles per hour, a number that dazzled the public and railroad executives alike. Yet on daily schedules, the train rarely sustained those velocities. Shared tracks, frequent stops, grade crossings, and the need to yield to slower freight traffic kept average speeds much closer to those of the best steam expresses. The timetable from Kansas City to Salina, for example, shaved only about an hour off the old steam schedule. Despite all the engineering that went into the streamlined design, the much-hyped speed advantage faded in the face of real-world operating conditions. Then came a shock that had nothing to do with economics or engineering. In 1942, as the United States ramped up production for World War II, aluminum became a strategic material. The War Production Board directed railroads to scrap anything deemed non-essential and reclaim metals for aircraft and munitions. The M-1000, with its lightweight aluminum body and limited passenger capacity, was a prime target. After just 7 years in service, the train was dismantled. Its futuristic shell was turned into warplanes and bombers. No preservation, no second act. By the time the war ended, the lesson was clear in the numbers. In 1960, diesel-electric locomotives powered nearly every passenger and freight train in America. The technology that made the M-1000 a marvel had won, but not in the form of a fixed, lightweight streamliner. The future belonged to modular diesels pulling conventional cars, faster, stronger, and built to survive the demands of a railroad nation. Innovation alone rarely rewrites the rules. Systems do. Today, as high-speed rail faces similar battles over infrastructure and economics, the lesson endures. Breakthrough ideas must fit the networks they enter, or they risk vanishing regardless of brilliance. Progress means more than invention. It means integration. The next leap forward will demand both. What's your take? Does technology change the system, or does the system change technology?